Yeah, we really just wanted to start off by shedding some light on how badly our area has been hit in comparison to other areas across the country and what it means for the young people in our area, and particularly focusing on school funding cuts to education. To start off, the constituency of cities of London and Westminster receive £1,500 more per student than those here in Hemsworth, which, and thanks to austerity, Wakefield District has received £18.6 million less in education funding since 2010. That works out about £309 less per student. And specifically, for example, St Wilfrid's High School in our constituency this year faces a £600,000 shortfall. That's a reduction of £441 spending per pupil, and Minslot Community College faces just short of £650,000 shortfall. That's a reduction of spending of £487 per pupil. These numbers start to begin to highlight just how badly our area's schools have been hit, and I'm sure we can all imagine how this goes into affecting the lives of countless young people in our area. The bad news doesn't stop there, though. Funding for students in further education has also dropped significantly since 2010 and 2011. Overall, it fell by 8% in real terms, to a point where it remains at the same levels it did during the early 2000s. Funding per pupil in sixth form colleges has also fallen by 21% since 2010 and 11. It remains lower than any point since the early 2000s. And funding for adult education has also been cut by 45% since 2009 and 10, which has mostly been delivered through fewer adult learners taking out qualifications at GCSE levels or below. These numbers are unacceptable, and I think we can all agree education should be a top priority for anyone to ensure the younger generation can learn the skills they need to succeed in life and to achieve their goals. But unfortunately, these numbers show us just how dire the situation is in our own back garden.
Yeah.
On top of education, youth services has also experienced a 70% funding cut since 2010. The educational maintenance allowance is no more, and research by Unite shows that over 4,500 youth work jobs have been lost, and 760 youth centres have been closed. We can also see how, unfortunately, youth unemployment in this area is so high in comparison to both regional and national averages. It currently sits at 12%. As well as all this, Wakefield Council have had £41.97 million taken from them since 2010, which is just over £407 less per household the council no longer has. That makes tackling the issues we talked about just now much more difficult. All of these issues individually are unacceptable and would be cause for us to get out there and make a change, but the fact that they're all happening at the same time is even worse, especially when we consider how Hemsworth seems to have drawn the short straw, if you will, in comparison to constituencies across the country, which Ben can tell you more about.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about comparing Hemsworth, the constituency of Hemsworth, to other constituencies in England, and particularly the cities of London and Westminster. So looking at the index of multiple deprivation, where Hemsworth is 111th most deprived constituency in England of 533, which isn't great. But the one which stands out for us is education, skills and training deprivation, in which Hemsworth is 32nd. Compare that to cities of London and Westminster, who are 522nd. So meaning that Hemsworth is massively more deprived compared to the vast majority of constituencies in England. For us, that is just simply not fair, and we see no reason why one region should be more deprived of quality education, and it has a clear knock-on effect on the prospects of young people in the area, which I'm going to talk about in the next slide, if you would, Evan. So looking at the social mobility rankings, Hemsworth is 529th out of 533, meaning that only 3 other constituencies have less opportunities for social mobility. This means and clearly shows that if you're born in Hemsworth poor, you're more likely to stay poor. Compare that to cities of London and Westminster, they're first. there's, yet again, I'll go back to it, there's no reason why, only because you're born in one area, you can't be able to climb that social mobility ladder. It's just not fair, and we see it as a really pressing issue which we need to address. And next slide, please. So looking at education attainment, austerity cuts will clearly have an impact on educational attainment and performance. 64% of Hemsworth constituency students achieved A star to C in maths and English, which is about average for the UK. However, Hemsworth is below the national average for pupils achieving AAB A-levels. Only 7% of the Hemsworth constituents achieve those grades, compared to 14% of the UK as a whole and 17% of the region. So whilst education prospects for 16-year-old students in Hemsworth is similar to that of the UK, by the time they reach 18, this picture has dramatically changed. It all links back to the leaderboards I spoke about earlier on. Next slide, please. And then you can look at how young people are moving away from our area. The number of 10 to 19-year-olds in Hemsworth is about average for the region and the country as a whole, but that changes when we look at the number of people between 20 and 29, for only 11% in this age group in Hemsworth, compared to 13% nationally and 18% in the cities of London and Westminster. This clearly shows that people between those ages of 20 and 29 are having to move away and from Hemsworth to look for jobs and opportunities to better their social mobility and income. The opportunities are just simply not there in our constituency. Again, we feel this is completely unfair and see no logical reason for this.
Yes, so thank you, Joseph and Ben, for presenting those. As you can see, there are some really quite shocking figures, especially when you compare Hemsworth to other constituencies, such as ones in London. And really, it's crucial to have equal education and equal opportunities for young people, because that lays the foundations for your opportunities in the rest of life. I mean, you can see from the social mobility figures that not having good opportunities in education has a knock-on effect and makes it much more difficult for people to climb the social ladder and be able to better themselves. If you have this inequality at such a young age, it just breeds more and more inequality as people grow up not having had equal opportunities and, like I said, not being able to better themselves. And as Ben said, there's no good reason for this. There's no excuse why young people in our area should receive less funding than young people in London, in Westminster. You, me, our friends, our siblings deserve just as good a start in life as anyone else anywhere else in the country. And that's why this issue needs to be addressed urgently.
I thought that the figures are dramatic. Obviously, we've had huge cuts in our area compared to the cities of London and Westminster. There is a north-south divide in the way this government spent money, and if money was to go where it's needed, in other words, where deprivation is the greatest, then it should be reversed. Because we saw the number of people getting A-levels in the cities of London and Westminster compared to the Wakefield area is quite dramatic. So normally I think most people in Britain would have a fairness agenda, a social justice agenda, the idea that money should be fairly distributed and the ones who need it the most should make sure that the funding's there, but that isn't happening. It's the reverse of what you'd expect. And the figures are quite shocking in terms of attainment. I agreed with Maureen, by the way, but about aspirations. But the thing is, if there are only warehouse jobs available to you, and if you're not living in a reasonably affluent family, you won't dare go to university if there's no jobs. You either leave the area, so there's a brain drain from the north to the south, or you stop here and you go for a warehouse job. And it's a very, very unjust country, is this, and its impacts on us more than most. So I suppose my final point is this. There's no justice in our country for people from poorer backgrounds, but there's no justice for the north of England either. And it is not acceptable that the North, our area, is being treated in this way in terms of funding, because young people, I don't care where they're born, what their background is, what the colour of the skin or anything else, how they talk, every human being is of the equal importance, and they should all get the same chance in life. But it's quite obvious from the figures that you've dug out that not every human being born in our area gets the same chance as somebody born in a more privileged part of the country, and that is an unacceptable situation that we're in.